Okay, welcome to our Tuesday Bliss Techniques meeting. And as you can see, well, maybe you can imagine perhaps by the image, it's chilly here. So, um, but I hope it's not chilly where you are. I hope that it is comfortable and that you have a nice space for our guided practice today. I will give you a tip. If it's cold and you can't stay warm on the floor, um, you could do it in bed because that's what I do a lot of the time when it's cold. So I'm not as much of a stickler for having to do it not in bed if at all possible as I used to be, because once you understand some of the basics, you can get very good results anywhere, but bed also included. So keep that in mind. So today is, as usual, a guided practice with a healing intention. So you want to have some clarity for yourself of how you want to direct that healing energy. So we'll be cultivating this energy, in terms of in qigong, we would say, cultivating qi. Um, or if we were doing pranayama, we would call it, you know, cultivating prana or something of that sort, but healing energy. So this energy is universal energy, and it can be directed through intention. So we just need to be clear about how we want it to be directed. And if you don't have a specific thing, then just that what a blessing that is, and just say, thank you that I am so blessed, and may this healing energy be uh, used in whatever is the best way for myself and for this world. Okay. But if there's anything in particular that's been bothering you, that you struggle with, that you're feeling challenged by, then have the intention to direct this healing energy to that. And that could be anything. It could be something that you perceive as physical. It could be something that you perceive as emotional. It could be something that you perceive is anything, relationship. It could, something you think is somebody else or something out there, and anything, because fundamentally the problem that you're having is one of your own relationship. I mean, it's just relationship, self to self. So this healing energy can heal anything, but you direct it to whatever is best for you. So just one more word about that, because I really want to be clear about how powerful this is. So this is like I said, it's universal energy. So this universal energy is the same energy, and it's intelligent. It's not just dumb energy. It's infinitely intelligent, because it is the energy that is able to organize into everything, every experience. So from the biggest to the smallest, everything that is occurring is this energy, this universal energy, self-organizing. So we're talking galaxies and the whole universe, or multiple universes, if you believe, however you can understand it, bigger, bigger and bigger and bigger, beyond, 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 all of that, and to the very smallest. So the tiniest subatomic particle, the tiniest, most infinitesimal uh, particle of consciousness, all of it, from so big to small, is entirely included, as within the domain of this self-organizing, intelligent energy, universal energy. And so we can at a certain level, we can relate. And in many ways, we relate badly. And so we experience those bad relationships as the aches and pains and discomforts and fears and anxieties and so forth and so on. And as we direct our healing intention to bring healing to these areas that of relationship within ourselves that we are we're out of balance or struggling or living in ignorance or whatever may be the case, then this intelligent, self-organizing, universal energy is able to, because it is the problem, what we perceive as the problem, as much as it is the solution, it can self-organize to manifest the healing. So you when if you're the reason I mention all this is because when you're looking at it and you're observing your experience with this in mind, then you'll start to see it more readily. You'll start to see how it is that the problem is manifesting, what it is. In other words, what are the beliefs that underlie it? What are the habits that underlie that? So even you take something like back pain. Okay, say, well, what? How could there be any beliefs underlying that? What this just? But you just have an idea about it, perhaps, or we've been told that there's if it's back pain, it's a physical thing, and if it's physical, then it's just dumb matter, and if it's just dumb matter, then it's divorced from consciousness. But if we start to recognize the context in which all of this is happening, we just start to open a little bit to the ways in which this universal healing energy, which is aware, conscious, intentional, self-organizing, intelligent, we start to recognize how it is functioning, what's happening, how it's organizing. We see the patterns. We see how it's all tied together like an enormous, infinite network of intelligence. And we start to see how we can reshape it, or not even reshape it so much as reshape ourselves. It's a reshaping of from the inside out, of how we're organizing ourselves to attract this kind of expression. So I hope that's clear. Okay. So it's very powerful, infinitely powerful. There's nothing beyond it. There's nothing greater than it. It is the supreme intelligence, and it exists in you and in everything, always. And so through this process, this cultivation of healing energy with our intention, our healing intention, the healing is taking place, and it's taking place at all levels. And so we want to be aware of the thoughts that surface, of the images that come, not because we need to puzzle it all out necessarily, but because we want to allow it. We want to allow for the emergence of the clarity of why and how this suffering has come to be, so that we can cease to do that thing. So just it fits, what I'm saying fits perfectly with Hannah's description of more or less the same thing, that we don't know why we're having the experience because we have sensory motor amnesia, but it's amnesia at all levels. So we've forgotten who we are. We don't realize that I'm not like this really, the way that I've imagined myself. It's not quite right. I've imagined myself in bad ways, good ways too, but in some bad ways. And so we can let those go. I'm not that person that I have all these bad judgments of. Okay. So let's find a comfortable place to lie down, if at all possible, on the back, because I'd like to take a detailed examination, exploration um, of the red light and green light patterns. And so very simple, but we miss the simplicity because we don't know how to attend to it. So this exercise, this exploration today will help you to attend to it and really discover things that you didn't realize or you'd forgotten were there. Um, so you want to have this, you want to be lying on the back and with the knees bent and the feet on the surface you're lying on, um, somewhat close to the buttocks, but not artificially close. You don't like tug them close, but just in that general direction, closer rather than farther from the buttocks. Comfortable distance though, so that you feel stable. Now if you're like me, and presumably like most of us, there's going to be some uncertainty here. It's like, is this quite right? I'm not sure. It feels somewhat kind of right, but not quite right. So if you have any of that kind of experience, that's okay. That's good. And if it's too much, then it will be uncomfortable. And if it's too uncomfortable, then it won't really let you do the thing that you want to do here, which is to calm down a bit. So if it's at all possible for you, find something that's good enough, that's close enough, that seems like maybe that's kind of right, sort of, and just surrender to it so that you like really allow yourself to be here. Because if you make too many compulsive adjustments, which most of us do, we don't realize how compulsively we move, micro movements often, but nonetheless, an enormous amount of compulsive movement. I'm shivering presently. How's that for compulsive movement? But you want to just really choose to be here. And if it's not quite right, which it's not quite right, because it's being held in not quite right because of all the sensory motor amnesia. So we're going to learn how to have less of the sensory motor amnesia, but we have to be somewhere for that to happen. Because if we're not willing to actually be here, which is physically be here, to actually keep the feet in this position, even if the legs feel a bit wobbly and there's a bit of something that registers as discomfort somehow somewhere, to still say, you know what, I'm going to keep my feet here anyway. But to find a way to do that that's gentle. So gentle doesn't mean that there's no organization or anything whatsoever. It's not complete chaos. There's some clarity of intention. I'm going to have my feet here. I'm going to have my knees going this way, not that other way. I'm going to have my head resting. I'm going to let my eyeballs rest, right? You don't need to have your eyeballs darting around. Not even a little bit. You could just let them rest. So, there's a possibility. Maybe the tongue could rest. The belly button could rest. Maybe the upper back could rest. Well, now we're going to learn how much more at rest we can come to be. So hopefully you're adequately at rest, that you're going to be able to find greater rest. Because that's the point. Remember, I'm saying that if you can't achieve at least enough rest to be able to call it rest of some kind, then it's hard to have more rest because you haven't even come to rest yet. So we have to come adequately to rest to be able to explore more rest. So we're going to try to keep ourselves more or less here throughout, if at all possible. Now, obviously, if it becomes completely undoable, if it just all starts to be actually painful and you can't really manage it in a good way, then rest. Don't do it like that anyway. Okay, because that won't give you good results. So take good care of yourself. I'm not saying, definitely never saying abuse yourself or anything like that. It's not like no pain, no gain kind of thing. So rest whenever you need, but find the edge. It's like, do you really need to rest, or is that just an idea? Because if you're at the point where it's like do or die, where were you that you let yourself get to that point? But oftentimes that comes up in our consciousness, that it's like, I can't be here any longer, not even for another second. It's so awful. I'm gonna fall apart. I'm gonna break or something. But you've been here present. It's not been like, you've been present enough. So maybe you could just kind of be truthful and say, wait a second, that's not so bad. And maybe I could just come to rest a little bit more. So you find out what's tensed up again. What can you let go of? Okay, so now let's, so you have your arms wherever they are, whatever's comfortable for you. So you got them there. Hopefully you're feeling good about it. If you're not feeling good about it, see why that is. You know, find out what is that about before you make any decisions about making some movement, because you don't know if the movement's going to be good or bad, useful or not. So get clear on, if you're going to do a movement, get clear on why you would. So you have your arms wherever they are, and you're going to keep them there more or less, presumably, throughout. So now, what I would like you to notice is that your spine is all the way from the tailbone, so you can get a sense inwardly of where the tailbone is. Hopefully you know kind of generally where that is, somewhere down there. And then all the way up the spine, so you can just kind of trace that with your awareness up the spine. And just keep going up, up, up at your own pace, but maybe you're somewhere kind of in the area of the mid back by now, at least. And then maybe kind of, between the shoulders, and then maybe somewhere like approaching the neck, then kind of on the neck, and then at the top of the neck, and then all the way to the head. So you kind of have some inner awareness now of the spine. Oh, by the way, hopefully you're breathing through the nose. That's always helpful if you can breathe through the nose. And notice that the breathing is a movement. So it's a compulsory movement, for now. So don't try to stop it, but do let it be relaxed. Do let it be spontaneous. Do let it be guided by the needs of the body rather than by the dictates of habit. And So as if that wasn't all enough to be aware of, we can become aware of more. And as we become aware of more, I want you to know that you'll continue to feel better and better. So that's also very helpful to keep in mind, because sometimes we forget that we can feel better and better. So now we can remember that. We want to remember that we can feel better and better. There's nobody that's uh, made it otherwise. It's not a rule anywhere in nature that it must get worse and worse. That's just an idea. So, uh, also an observation made by Anna, in his myth of aging. He points out that almost everything that's attributed to aging that is considered to be negative has nothing to do with aging. It has to do with deterioration, and that they're not the same. That aging, another word for aging is maturation. And what a wonderful thing it is to mature, as is happening presently, right? That we are discovering things about ourselves and about life, the richness of it that we hadn't previously appreciated, and the uh, beauty of it that we hadn't previously fully appreciated. So as we're about to move, but as we're moving, which we will do presently, keep that in mind, that this is to help you feel better. So allow yourself to feel better. Let the movement be a way in which you get to feel better in a very simple way. So you're aware of your spine, and your spine can move in various ways, but two of those ways, which we're going to explore in some detail today, uh, I will describe to you. So one way is that um, the head and the tailbone could move closer to one another backward, so that the spine bows or arches. And uh, just imagining that, you might already even start to notice that a little bit there's an activation of that pattern physically, that it actually begins to manifest just by imagining it. Some of you maybe, well, presumably some are more sensitive than others, so some will notice, others may not, but it's very detectable to anybody who wishes to um, attune themselves and notice it. So uh, you can then voluntarily relax that, let that lengthen and release. So you can maybe notice that you're able to do that too. So just with your, in a sense, just with your imagination, you have some ability to voluntarily control the extensor muscles. So that's a pattern of extension, and it's what Hannah calls a green light pattern. The other way that we're going to explore today, which is the reverse, in a sense, of what we've just explored, is that the head and the the tailbone could come closer to one another um, in front, so that the spine curves forward. And similarly, you might notice that just by imagining that or sensing that, that you start to feel the activation subtly of that pattern physically. And if you are able to notice that, then you're also able to release it. So just in your imagination now, release it. Just lengthen, soften, release on the front side. So that's a pattern of flexion, or what Hannah calls red light. Now, Hannah calls green light and red light by these names because, at least in the US and presumably elsewhere, uh, there's a traffic signaling pattern using lights. Green light means go, and red light means stop. And this somewhat corresponds to the basic energy of the patterns. So if we are activating the extensor muscles, then this is a pattern of going. This is a pattern of doing. This is a pattern of moving forward. So this is the pattern that, that kind of says it all. Okay, so useful basic pattern, but we want to be able to use it voluntarily and release it voluntarily. The red light pattern, this pattern of flexion, is he calls it a red light pattern because it is a pattern of stopping. It's actually a pattern of withdrawal. So corresponds to states of fear. And so these are two basic patterns that exist in most species. I mean, certainly in all vertebrates, these patterns exist because these are the basic patterns of the spine. Two of the basic patterns. So, of course, you could have sensory motor amnesia with these patterns. So if you have sensory motor amnesia, then, well, that's what we're going to want to get more clarity on now with this movement. So I want you to, again, I want you to imagine or sense your spine, starting with the tailbone and moving up the spine with your awareness all the way up to the skull. And you're going to do it several times. And each time that you do it, I want you to have a sense of that area of your spine resting, relaxing, and releasing to the surface that you're lying on. So I'm just going to take a minute with this. So you're not going to go super slowly. You want to be able to do it a couple of times. You're just familiarizing yourself with the inner sense of the spine from tailbone to the skull by just moving your awareness up the spine several times, and each time, each point where you bring your attention, you want to have a sense of that in resting, moving toward rest in the direction of the surface that you are resting on. And then uh, do the same. Well, no, we'll do that. We'll do that one in a moment. So the next thing that we'll do, so you've done that exercise with your inner awareness. Now, I want you to next imagine the spine going into a green light pattern. So when I say this, I really mean I want you to imagine the spine. I don't necessarily want you to try to do that because you don't necessarily know how to do that competently. So the how you would think about doing it would be different than how you would imagine it. If you would just imagine this spine moving into a green light pattern. So you can just imagine that and notice perhaps that you, as you do that, you can start to sense almost as if it's just happening on its own within, just a subtle energy of the spine beginning to arch. So it's just at a subtle level. It may not even be any perceptible movement, or there might be, depends, various factors, but don't feel that you must make a movement because this is really just about imagining it. And maybe the imagination will produce a movement and maybe not. So then, well, I didn't say this part. Now release that. So imagine the spine releasing. I'm so suggestible. I'm just sitting here and I'm I feel it. I guess it's, just from having done it so many times, I just it's automatic. This is going to be so helpful for sitting, for walking, so many things. You're going to feel so good. You're going to feel better than you remember feeling. And you'll notice that this all just, the more you allow it, the more you'll notice that it carries over, not just during the practice, but into the rest of your life. So do that several more times. Just imagine the spine going into a green light pattern so that it's arching. So I'm experiencing it. Holy cow. It's pretty powerful, just the imagination, if you allow it. And then imagine that it's releasing, lengthening, softening. So all along the spine, all along it. But maybe you start to notice that there's, you do it a few more times and just pay attention as you imagine that the spine is moving into a green light pattern, arching. Notice when you imagine that, where does it begin? Where do you notice that the spine actually, where does the arching begin? If you're imagining the spine all the whole length of it. So there's the part of the spine that's way down there, tailbone, and then there's the part that's a little still pretty low down, but not quite as low down. And then there's the part that's still a little bit kind of down there, but maybe not so low down there. Then you get to a point where it's like, huh, that's kind of the middle. Now, is it really is it the middle in what sense? And that's the thing that you start to notice in as you're imagining it. What is that? Where is the middle? What from where does the spine begin to move into this arch, and then from where is it released? And so you might find that each time that you imagine the spine releasing, softening, lengthening, that there's more space, and that the spine can really relax, that there's more pleasant sensation all along the spine, on either side of the spine, maybe all along and across the whole back, including the neck. So now, when you next come to rest, just rest there. And as you're resting there, breathing through the nose, hopefully, you're just going to breathe naturally. But I want you to explore the breath as you're resting here, consciously relaxing, visualizing this very relaxed, supple spine and back. And I want you to, as you're inhaling through the nose, keep allowing yourself to inhale until you're sure that it's not possible to inhale any further without strain. So, and then you just exhale through the nose at that point in a relaxed way, nothing forced, nothing strained. So it's a natural breath, but with particular attention to the inhalation, ensuring that you don't stop inhaling until you're sure that it's not possible to inhale anymore without strain. So how might you do that? Well, paying attention to where the tension is and releasing the tension. So the more comfortable you are breathing in a very relaxed way, very gentle way, the more experience particularly that you have that gives you confidence that you can breathe in this way, then you'll maybe find that, wow, the inhalation, maybe the exhalation as well, are quite long, but totally relaxed. So as you're doing this, of course, you'll encounter the tension, the habitual tension, some of which is there that you just don't notice until you attend to the breath in this way, and some of which you'll notice has a tendency to start creeping up on you. Well, stuff that has a tendency to creep up on you, some of that's probably what you've just released through this simple visualization. And so this breathing awareness practice is very, very helpful in allowing the healing from the visualization you've just done to become permanent at a very deep level, because at a very deep level you're learning about how you have a tendency to involuntarily contract these muscles, and you're learning how to voluntarily release that at a very deep level. So it's very, very effective. It will get to the whole root of it and change it. So it's very, very powerful, yet simple. You can also, well, we'll move on now. I'll because I realized that we can do a similar thing on the exhalation, but we'll do that after we've explored the red light pattern. So now we're going to explore the red light pattern, and what you can do is you can visualize the spine, and you can imagine the spine moving into a red light pattern, and then releasing. So you're just visualizing it, imagining it. You're not trying to move. The movement may happen. It may be a small movement, it may be a big movement, but all we're doing is imagining. And if the movement happens, it happens. If it doesn't happen, it's totally fine. Because if you try to move, there's a time and place for that. That's more like the Feldenkrais approach. You just keep moving and moving and moving until something starts to shift, because you start to learn something from the repetition done with awareness. But here we're getting at a lower level. You can make those corrections at a subtler level by imagining, because it's at the level of imagination that the movement begins. So all movement begins with imagination, but our imagination is has some gaps in it, places where we don't imagine well, or we imagine incorrectly. And so we're talking about like spatial awareness. So if you don't imagine correctly, even if you're off just by a small amount, well, you'll need prescription glasses for that. No joke. And then, or maybe you don't, maybe it's not so bad that you need prescription glasses, but you can't throw with accuracy, or your handwriting's not very good, or you cramp up when doing certain activities, things like that. It's just due to gaps or errors in the imagination. So here, at a very subtle level, at the level of imagination, Just imagine the spine moving into the red light pattern and then releasing. And each time you do it, and you can do it whatever, you can explore the pace. You could try it very slowly. You could try it at medium. You could try it at a more rapid pace. See what the experience is. Each variation may give you different information. You might prefer some to others. But each time you're doing it, notice, as we did when we were exploring the green light pattern, notice if there's somewhere that this pattern, when you imagine it, where it moves, where it starts from, where it's initiated. And you might find, hopefully you would find that it's a similar location to this location from which the green light pattern is initiated. So when you next imagine relaxing, then just continue to imagine relaxing and notice as you're just relaxing and imagining yourself relaxing, that you're still breathing, hopefully through the nose. And let's do the same exercise with the breath that we did just a moment ago. So that is, as you inhale, allow for the inhalation to continue as long as it's possible to continue to inhale without strain. So you're not straining, but it's right up until you're sure that any more inhalation would require strain. And then you're to allow for a relaxed, natural exhalation and allow for the exhalation to continue as long as it's possible without strain. So just notice as you do that how it can really enhance the effects, so that you're learning, your nervous system is learning what it feels like at a very deeper level to relax. So that you can really start to feel good. And you can start to notice that that whole, if you allow it, that whole release can spread across the whole chest and abdomen, all the way to the sides, the right and the left. And all the way down to the lower abdomen and the pelvic floor. So now, for those who are feeling adventurous, we can explore these patterns in with a more with a bigger muscular activation. So we'll start. See if it's possible for you, and if it's too much for you to try and do, then you needn't do it. But for those who are able to do so, it will be very helpful. See if you can maintain the same breathing pattern, and see if you can. Um, well, see if you can maintain the same breathing pattern throughout. Because this is remember, it's a breathing pattern of zero strain, but it's the maximum breath with zero strain. So it's very revealing. So it's helpful in that regard. Okay, so we'll start with imagining the green light pattern. And as you imagine the green light pattern, I want you to feel how the front side of your body remains relaxed and open. And then imagine the spine releasing and maintain the same relaxation on the front side of the body. So notice, do that several times, and notice that each time as you imagine the spine in moving into green light, that you, so there's a subtle or not so subtle sense of arching, and simultaneously you're continuing to sense the opening and release of the front side of the body, the chest and the abdomen. And then as you imagine the spine releasing, you just continue to maintain that same openness and relaxation in the front side of the body, the abdomen and the chest. So do that several more times, and you might notice that a couple of things. One is that you might notice, perhaps somewhat to your surprise, that you have a habit of holding tension unnecessarily in the front side of the body, that when you imagine the spine releasing, that there's a habit of a contraction on the front side of the body, but it's unnecessary. So you're learning how to not do that. You're learning how to just continue to keep the front side passive in this movement. As the spine is arching, the front side of the body can relax. The shoulders can relax. The chest can relax. The abdomen can relax. And as the spine is releasing to neutral, that's doesn't require anything from the front side of the body. The front side of the body can just continue to just be relaxed. So that's one thing you might notice. Another thing you might notice is that maybe the movement is actually happening, and maybe it's a little bit bigger of a movement now than it was previously. So we're noticing, first we have to reestablish at a deeper level the fundamental pattern, fundamental green light pattern, because it was kind of corrupted over time. We lost a lot of information in that basic movement pattern. So at a very deep level, by imagining, we reestablish some of the healthy, natural pattern for movement in that way. And then we also have to learn how to coordinate awareness of the front side and the back side at the same time so that we don't tense up in the front side when we're releasing to neutral. So you might start to feel good. Okay. And then let's do the same thing with the red light. So as you're going to begin to imagine the spine moving into red light and then releasing. And I want you to notice now, as the spine moves into red light, the lower back begins to press into the surface that you're on. Now, for a lot of people, they chronically hold tension in the lower back. Now, because you've just been exploring the green light pattern, we've released some of that, but we haven't released it through the full range of its motion. So here, I want you to really bring your awareness to that lower back and imagine that it's really pressing into the surface that you're lying on. So just feel that it's really pressing, really, really, really pressing. And notice you could even bring your, you could even actually imagine that you could even use your hands and bring them in front of your abdomen and press and imagine that you're pressing something down, just some imaginary thing that you imagine you're pressing down, that's pressing your through into your lower abdomen, pressing the lower back into the floor or whatever you're lying on. So you can really start to feel, and you can feel there's a real energy that you can start to feel there in the lower abdomen. So you just start to feel that, and then slowly release. Imagine the spine releasing to neutral, but be aware of the lower back. Keep the lower back released, because what we were just doing was helping the lower back learn how to release even more. So as you're imagining the spine releasing into neutral, be aware of the lower back and any tendency there to recontract, and just continue to let it be relaxed. Take a breath or two using the breathing technique, just maximum relaxed breath. Both inhalation and exhalation, so no strain, but maximum. And it should be comfortable. I mean, hopefully that makes sense. If it's not strained, it's comfortable, but should be comfortable. So if you'd like, well, no, we're going to wrap up because it's been an hour. But I hope that this has been very enlightening exploration for you, because I do, and it can make an enormous difference in your life. So I would recommend that these are very helpful exercises for you to explore. I mean, particularly if you've found them helpful, then they'll be continue to be helpful. And even if you're not clear on whether you found them helpful or not, I'm fairly certain they will be helpful to you, but perhaps with some clarification. So if you have any questions about it or anything that you think might be helpful to share so that any feedback on your experience, please do provide that. Because as I have said, I genuinely believe and have good reason to believe that this simple exploration that we've just done today um, is very, very powerful. It does many things. I mean, number one, obviously, it addresses um, the red light and green light patterns, um, which covers a lot of ground. Um, so that physically, somatically, uh, will help tremendously everybody, because everybody, that's basic movement patterns for every living being. Well, every vertebrate. And so I'm certain that on that level, they're very, very, very helpful. I believe, but I enthusiastically await your feedback on it, because I believe this is a much more effective um, introduction to red light and green light than any that I am familiar with, including Hannah's own work on the subject. Um, because so there's that. And then it also can help you to become simultaneous to that and not unconnected to that. It helps you become aware of um, the somatic center, or I think really more of what would be called the lower dantian in qigong. So this is a very and helps you to connect that with the breath. So perhaps you have noticed, and if not today, when you're exploring it on your own, or if we do it, we'll probably do it together again. See if when you're breathing, you can notice a connection between your breathing and that somatic center. So that when you become aware of that area where the movement is initiated, and you start to feel that area, and you start to feel what it feels like to have energy there, because we've not had energy there. That's part of the problem. So we're not accustomed to feeling the energy there. When you start to feel the energy there, and become more and more familiar with that, you'll start to notice that when you're aware of that energy there, it helps you to start to feel better. So when you're breathing with a breath awareness in that area, it with this notion of the maximum relaxed breath, then this is one form of what would be called lower dantian breathing, which is it's like a universal healing elixir. So it does many things, many good things. It's suitable for almost everybody, and so it's a very, very good thing. So the more you can gently facilitate that awareness, so that that's just always there, you'll be helping yourself to feel better. and better every day. Seriously. So take just a moment to feel that healing energy. Notice it wherever you notice it in yourself. And give thanks. Give thanks for the opportunity, the knowledge, the lessons, and the healing. And be willing to receive as much as you're willing to receive. And then to bless others, knowing that the more you bless, the more you are blessed. It has to be sincere, but insincere blessing is better than if you're not gonna if it's not gonna be sincere blessing, insincere will do. But aim for sincere. It will give you the best results. So whenever you're welcome to take as much time as you would like to soak in the healing and the blessings and to bless. But this is the conclusion of today's guided practice. So I will be ending the recording momentarily. Thank you all for joining me, as always. Blessings to you all. I'll see you next time.